going to be starting?
What are you looking for?
The video stream.
We're not doing video stream anymore. We haven't done that for a couple months.
I think there was 70, but it was 70.
I thought, well, you did it last month.
Stream.
I'm not talking about,
Oh,
it's not synchronized.
It's on the
synchronized, is it?
website for public hearing.
Correct. Correct.
There should be
So that's not on there. Okay, there we go.
I want to call to order the Amberley Village Council meeting of September 14, 2020. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak. Here. Peg Conway. Here. Ed Hattenbach. Here. Lita Kamine. Here. Tom Muthing.
Here.
Ray Warren.
Here.
Natalie Wolf.
Zoom.
Here. Scott Larmer. Here. Chief Wallace.
Here.
Rick Kay.
Here. And I want to remind everyone again, it's critical that you speak into the mic and speak a little louder than you do normally because of the face mask. We do want to have everyone heard. Okay, if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on the agenda this evening is our minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. Those minutes were circulated in advance. There were a couple small changes that were circulated this afternoon. Are there any further changes? Seeing none, we can consider the minutes approved. We'll now hear the finance report for the month of July.
Scott Larmer, Amberley Village Manager. The UAN report has been included in your packet. There's also a memo that summarizes the finances for the month of July 2020. The earnings tax collections for the month of July totaled about $758,000. This is up from July of 19 collections amount of $145,000, and that is all due to the tax due date being changed from April to July of 2020 instead of April. So the collections that we've had so far this year are $1.9 million. It is on par with what we collected in 2019. We just have not had any growth in the earnings tax in this past year, but that is a good sign that we are keeping pace with our 2019 collections. The village did receive a little over $6,000 for the local government fund, and that brings our revenues for the month of July to a total of $850,000. Our total year-to-date revenue is $3.4 million. Our estimate for 2020 was $5.6 million, so we have collected 61% of our revenues thus far. On the expense side, the village spent $561,000 during the month of July, and our total year-to-date expenditure is just a little over $3 million, which puts us at an expenditure rate of about 53% as of the end of July. And that concludes leaves an unencumbered general fund balance at the end of July of $5.4 million. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the manager?
I'd like to make a comment. The investment listing, which we all have, has $750,000 in Star Ohio funds, which is an overnight fund which we can use. Current rates on CDs are minimal, so this 0.3% rate is about the best thing we can get, and it's on a daily basis. So we're trying to invest the best we possibly can.
And the staff do follow this very closely, and the finance committee reviews that on a monthly basis also, where we are on investments and so forth. So that is a regular agenda item at our finance committee. Any other questions? Thank you. Next, we have 4 citizens to speak, and I think all 4 have spoke before. I think tonight is for those viewing the meeting either now or over the next month, this is a good example. We have both residents that are in person as well as people over the phone, and we will be having a public hearing next month, and it does allow either way for residents to address council, and you can do that not only next month, but any month. You know, we're more than happy to take people either in person or over the phone. So first person to address council is Carol Donnelly. And again,
Excuse me.
if you could just state your name, address, and then you have 3 minutes to address council.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me,
Carol
Tom?
Donnellan,
Excuse me, Tom?
8770 Arborcrest. And I'm representing the Health and Wellness Committee of We Thrive. And we've been around for about 2 years now, really promoting health and wellness in the community as a small group of citizens. And we're at the point now where we think we could really be much more impactful if we were aligned in the village structure. And so what we are requesting is to become an official committee of council. Any questions? Any more?
Yeah, hi Carol, and
Hi,
thank
Natalie.
you for taking on this task of the Health and Wellness Committee, because I don't know if everybody is aware, but Amberley's a charter member of We Thrive since 2011, and as part of being, and We Thrive being a division of Hamilton County Public Health, and as part of what we do is keep tabs on how the village is doing in many, many areas. And we Thrive, through the structure of We Thrive, the committees evaluate pretty much every area of the village in different ways. For example, the Environmental Stewardship Committee took on the task of, what was it called? The environmental pathway. Right. So different pathways. And initially, Amberley took on the pathway of overall health of the village, and we got a grant for it. And another pathway that We Thrive and Hamilton County Public Health encouraged us to work on was chronic disease. And that's where Carol and the Health Committee came in and took on that task of evaluating the village and within the structure of chronic disease, which isn't a very nice name, which is why they changed the name of the committee and the pathway and this is how we have yoga on the lawn, and we've seen their presence at Ice Cream Social, and they were going to do a health fair at the J. And what the committee would like, I think, is to be a part of the community in the way that the Environmental Stewardship Committee is. And I think it's an excellent idea. They meet monthly, and within the structure of Hamilton County Public Health and We Thrive, it really does force the elected officials to take a holistic overall view of the village in ways that elected officials myopically don't like to do. So it broadens everyone's perspective and is good for everybody in Amberley.
I'll just add one more thing. Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, Carol, for coming. I've been to a couple of your meetings, and it's great. And I think I also support it and see in the way that you just described, because it is part of We Thrive in the same way that the Environmental Stewardship Committee is and can be. But one of the other advantages, I think, that it seems like being officially affiliated with us would give is a little bit more information dissemination. So the way we communicate about what you're doing, the access to some of our dissemination of information to village residents, I think, by being officially affiliated would also provide, in addition to all the benefits you just mentioned, I think that's another one that would be very helpful, and I'm always in support of getting the word out about the good things that are happening in the village to village residents, so that's another good reason to support that. But I also just thank you for taking this on and for everything you're doing and keeping us healthy.
Yeah, in taking from a practical standpoint, The Environmental Stewardship Committee was created by ordinance, so in order to, proceed with this request, we need some process to create an ordinance, define the committee, et cetera, et cetera. Where is the best place? How is the best place for that to happen?
I've got a proposal. And the Environmental Stewardship Committee, just so we're clear, it's not technically a committee of council, because the Environmental Stewardship Committee is an advisory body to council. It has one member of council assigned. It has one member of the Planning Commission assigned. It is not unlike the other committees that have 3 members of council on those. So I think that type of structure is something that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'd like to refer this to the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee for consideration and to bring that forward.
Perfect.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Steve Cushard. Steve, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Tom.
Okay, Steve, again, if you'll just state your name and address and then go ahead.
Excuse me, Tom?
Steve Cushard, 3205 North White Tree Circle. After attending the last 2 BZA Planning Committee public hearings virtually and by viewing the YouTube videos, it appears to me that we should really table and pause the Amberley Green zoning text change. Several committee members had questions and concerns regarding the zoning text and why we were even doing it. One comment was, and I'll quote from listening to the video, "I almost feel like there is a plan that we don't know. Zoning to a plan that we are not privy to, as it seems at random to me." And then even the village manager has said a few times at some of the meetings regarding the zoning text, and this is kind of a quote from that also, "Village does not have a specific plan for the property in terms of uses. Currently nothing in the works for the property." So then Brian Snyder, your expert from Hamilton County, at one of the zoning text hearings said, this exercise was not to create the village vision, but he assumed the village would find a developer with a vision shared by the village. Well, we have no explicitly stated vision for the property. We have no current market-based goals and objectives defined for the property. So why are we zoning, and what are we zoning to? What we need to do is plan for the zoning and not zone for a yet-to-be-determined plan. This just doesn't make sense. The current zoning text, as the last iteration that I saw, is very restrictive. I think we need as much flexibility as possible and encourage creative thinking regarding development. I don't believe some of the uses listed in all those pages of things that could happen would ever come to fruition. That's why we need an outside expert to determine what is possible based on village goals, objectives, and strategies. Hire an expert, let them objectively manage this development project. We don't have the skill set or expertise in-house. For more than 12 years, we have little to show by trying to manage a project ourselves. The zoning text will allow piecemeal development, cater to special interest, and could open us up to future lawsuits. It's an ill-conceived plan. There's no reason we need to make this decision right now. There's no rush. We spent thousands of dollars, countless hours to get to this point. I'd like to propose a common sense approach to this. Forget for now any zoning standards, master plan, development standards, and simply put forward a statement of understanding that the village is interested in supporting any development that is deemed appropriate and complementary for a residential community, that being Amberley Village. This statement of understanding should be simple and not overly cumbersome. We own the property. Nothing can happen unless we allow it. As the village is proceeding now, developers will be scared off with the standards and zoning that have been proposed. Right now, the village needs to generate interest in the site through a solid, well-developed, comprehensive marketing plan, not through development standards that will be seen as obstacles. Thank you.
Okay. And this is on the agenda for later in the meeting, so, unless there's specific questions of council members. Okay.
No, my only question is that I wish council would really consider why we're moving forward with this reading and the zoning.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Tom, before we move forward,
Yes, Ray.
this is Ray Warren.
Yes.
I would ask all the speakers live in the chamber, including council members, if you could speak closer into the mic, because sometimes it sounds like you've got marbles in your mouth, and so I think if you get closer to the mic, it'll be more clear. Thanks.
Okay, next up, Louis Katz.
I think I have to use Purex now that I touched the mic. Louis Katz, I'd like to say 8770 Arborcrest, but Carol already said that. That was my parents' house that the Donalds bought from them. And I hope you're enjoying it as much as my parents did. It's 6785 East Beachlands Drive. Ray, I hope you can hear me. The technology is very difficult with the masks on, but I really do think Scott did have marbles in his mouth. I couldn't understand a word he said. I'm also here talking about the Amberley Green zoning text. Steve did a wonderful job talking about some of the technical points. I'm going to approach this more from the hearts and flowers standpoint, which those lawyers know often in argument you have the first part of the argument followed by the second part. And for this, I'll have to put on my glasses. I apologize. When I sat on council, those of us on council, as Peg, who had different color hair at the time, and Ed, who had more hair, knew, we had a vision of how to make Amberley great again. Sorry for borrowing that. We had just surfaced from the litigation trenches and the disharmony and the black eye that our village had had. We worked hard to bring peace and prosperity to our village. We wanted to find the very best use for Amberley Green, a use that would bring prestige and recognition to our village. We brought in new blood, which we have sitting here, to help find fresh ideas. I personally met with developers, representing business, representing hotels, representing entertainment venues like wedding venues, caterers, and we couldn't find the right fit. But we refused to settle. So we continued to work on things that made sense, like protecting our roads, managing village business as we're doing here, as you're doing here tonight. When I first saw the proposed zoning, I didn't understand it. I read it several times and couldn't understand it. I went to the committee meeting thinking it would be explained, and I found that the committee members didn't understand it. And they sent Scott and the fellow from Hamilton County back to make changes. I understand that Rick said even after the changes were made, he didn't understand what was finally done. I did ask Rick how much we were spending to have this proposed ordinance written, and he said he thought it was for free. I called Scott and found out that we at that time had over $5,000 in it, and I suspect that we're probably north of $10,000 at this point in time spent on this ordinance. And I think that's probably a significant waste of money based on what I understand this ordinance to be doing, just to set up a structure, throwing everything that we had talked about against the wall to see if anything sticks. This zoning ordinance, I believe, creates more issues, and I don't think it solves any of them. With fellow residents fearing having meetings, not understanding what's being said, technology problems, I think it's disingenuous to have this discussion at this point in time, no matter how close we talk in a microphone, no matter how much we enunciate. People are afraid to come out. We have very little attendance on this. And to sow this kind of discord at this point in time under these circumstances, I believe is a big mistake. It's been said that a decision is a point you reach when you get tired of thinking. I'm asking council not to succumb to the pressure just to do something. Doing nothing is better than doing something wrong. Nothing's going to happen now with development. We all know that. The coronavirus has stopped everything. To do it at this time, I think would be a big mistake. I'm asking you to table it, defer it until sometime when development even makes sense, when we can talk to people about it, when we can get residents fully involved in this. To quote Michael Gerson, when we were in the midst of the fight with Hal Holmes, Michael said to the president of Hal Holmes, some of the best deals he ever made were the ones he walked away from. He ended by saying to Hal Holmes, what I am saying to you here tonight, and I'm quoting Michael, I am telling you, no, I am begging you, don't do this now, unquote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Colin Driscoll.
Lower it down a little bit. Colin Driscoll, 6600 Ridge Road. First, I'd like to commend Council for considering Resolution 2026, authorizing a contract with Contract Recovery Solutions to help with the reimbursement of certain public safety expenses. A while back, I addressed Council asking if we sought reimbursement when people destroyed village properties such as guardrails. Engaging the services of Cost Recovery Solutions should help us mitigate the loss or destruction of village property cost effectively. Secondly, our village charter states, the Planning Commission shall have all the powers granted to and shall perform all the duties imposed upon planning commissions and platting commissions by the laws of Ohio. So I went to the Ohio Revised Code to find out more. Chapter 713, Planning Commissions, Section 1 states how a village establishes a planning commission. Section 2 covers powers and duties, saying, with a view to the systematic planning of municipal corporation, the commission may make recommendations to public officials. The commission may from time to time amend, extend, or add to the plan. Section 6, Division of Municipal Corporation into Zones. The Planning Commission of any municipal corporation may frame and adopt a plan for dividing the municipal corporation to any portion thereof into zones or districts. Section 8, restriction on heights of buildings and structures. Section 11, administrative board powers and duties. The power to hear and determine appeals, to permit exceptions to and variations from district regulations. My summary, the state offers thoughtful, detailed guidance and structure surrounding planning commissions. Our charter states the Planning Commission may adopt and may from time to time amend or modify a general village plan. It shall further consider all petitions for amendment of the zoning plan referred to council. Further stating no recommendation of the Planning Commission with reference to changes in the zoning plan, changes in the village plan, shall be amended by council nor adopted contrary to the recommendation of the Planning Commission, except upon a vote of 5 members of council. Recommendations of the Planning Commission may be adopted by council by a majority vote. I'd like council to strongly consider the recommendations of the Planning Commission, our resident experts on these important matters. Ordinance 2020-16 suggests to me that you have taken the Planning Commission's recommendation to heart. As I read it, this ordinance would only adopt the purpose and use regulations of the Amberley Green District Regulation zoning text while eliminating sections 2 through 8, the balance of the voting text. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. And Colin, just for your information, you're right on the Cost Recovery Corp, but we had a prior company that did the same thing. This is just a new company we've contacted.
I saw that, actually.
Yes, it says it on here too.
Okay, thank you very much for presentations. And we did have on the agenda this evening a recognition of some Amberley Village police officers. That has been deferred from this evening because of some illness in the family. But even having said that, you know, every council meeting, we kind of talk about this. We could recognize our police officers virtually at every meeting. I mean, I saw on Nextdoor this evening some new recognition of police officers who went out of their way to find some children up in French Park. And so this is the type of thing that our police and our maintenance guys go out of their way all the time to do things. And I think, you know, we will recognize the specific officers that saved lives at a future meeting. But, you know, our residents do a good job recognizing our officers. But it's never, we can't do it enough. And we should always recognize those officers. Okay, we'll now move on to committee reports. First, the Police and Fire Committee.
How timely. Okay. The committee met via Zoom on September 9th, and you have in the packet a resolution concerning cost recovery. For the past decade, the village has contracted with Cost Recovery Corp. To obtain reimbursement for certain costs for police or fire services to non-residents. The company was bought out several years ago, and since then their focus has shifted more toward EMS services. And subsequently, Amberley Village's rep at this company started their own similar business called Cost Recovery Solutions. So this was discussed at the meeting, and staff has recommended switching our business to this new company. And so the committee was in concurrence with that. It's going to be the same type of provisions, similar schedule, just all the same kinds of things, just a different company. So I move that we adopt Resolution 2020-26, authorizing a contract with Cost Recovery Solutions for the collection and reimbursement of certain public safety expenses.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2020-26, authorizing a contract with Cost Recovery Solutions. Are there any questions or comments?
Tom?
Yes.
This is Ray. Does this, this is a question to Peg. Peg, does this constitute a fine that someone incurs, or how is this managed?
It is largely managed at, can you hear me, Ray?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It occurs at the level of insurance companies, and it is billed, but it's not super collected. It's not, you know, super aggressive. If the chief would like to add context on that, I would welcome his additional comments. It's for non-residents. It's not for people who are paying taxes in the village.
Ray, what it is it's a cost recovery, and what they do is they recover costs and expenditures that the village uses for other people that are non-tax paying residents. If there's an auto accident caused by an outside resident, their insurance company would be billed. It does not bill residents who already pay taxes. It's the same system we've been on for in excess of 10 years. There's really no change. The billing scale's the same as well.
So does this have teeth? I mean, does this have teeth for collection, or, you know, is it, that's what I'm saying, is it like a fine, or is it we're just trying to collect, we're just trying to be reimbursed, and this is just a way to do this?
The goal is to get reimbursement for the officer's time and the use of the village equipment. There is no, the pay scale is set. There's a percentage that goes to the company that does the collecting for us, but we do not send individual people to collections for the services.
Okay, so in other words, so this insurance company goes to, I guess, the other insurance company that represents the, I don't know, the plaintiff, if you will.
It is not an insurance company, it's a
resolution.
collection service.
Excuse me?
It is not an insurance company, it is a collection service, a third-party entity that seeks to get reimbursement for the village for these types of expenses. And as the chief noted, we've been doing this for over a decade. We were actually among the early adopters of this type of thing.
How successful are these collection agencies?
We'll have to come back to that at another meeting. We don't have that information ready to hand. We can seek that out.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
If not, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2020-26. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the resolution passes unanimously.
Okay, I have several other things to report from our meeting. We were joined as part of the meeting by Chief Todd Owens of Reading, and you may recall that Reading is now our provider for EMS services. He presented summary data on services provided in the village year to date, including types of incidents, response times, actions taken, number and destination of transport, and use of mutual aid, all of which continues to be aligned with the results that were anticipated last winter when we first arranged this contract. We also had some discussion about the types of things that have been happening. We noted that there were a fair number of people who declined to be transported against medical advice, and we asked what that was about. And he explained that in the time of COVID, sometimes people really don't want to go to the hospital, and so they did some treatment for them and respected their wishes. Chief Wallace shared some kudos from our officers about Reading's really compassionate handling of an elderly resident here in Amberley who was ill and needed some assistance. And likewise, they discussed the statistics or the arrangement that they have for cases where someone has fallen or just needs help getting up, and the dispatch always sends the ambulance, even though in many cases our officers have provided the assistance, but just as a caution to have that service on hand. He also provided us with some new information. There is a dedicated mobile stroke unit that's being dispatched out of Springfield Township. It's owned by UC. This service just began August 10th, and it's handled, the dispatchers are being trained to triage with certain questions and things, but the committee suggested that there be some community information provided about that. It just began in August. He also reported that the Reading EMS was recognized for multiple times, once again, by Mission Lifeline for their care of heart attack patients. So overall, the committee continues to be very pleased. We feel like we have a real partnership, and it's obvious that there's strong collaboration with our department, and so that was really helpful to have that report. That's the second time this year he has come to give us a report. Likewise, Chief Wallace provided his periodic department update. He reported on some upcoming training where staff is going to be educated about mental illness, which is actually happening this week. This program was inspired by interactions that he had with a resident of the village who has a family member with mental illness. Late last year, he reported that they did some inner bias training for everyone, and these are recorded and referred to again in the future. The chief shared data on racial breakdown of citations issued by our officers, which he tracks monthly by officer. In total, just over 45% of citations were to white people, and just over 54% were to Black, Asian, or Middle Eastern people. And that is about in the range that he expects. The proportion of people of color reflects the surrounding areas, in addition to village residents. The chief monitors these numbers by individual officer in order to make sure that everyone is patrolling the entire village and not just in particular areas. Within the Ohio Collaborative, Chief Wallace reported that Amberley has completed the Group 1 and Group 2 standards and is currently working on the standards addressing bias-free policing and investigating employee misconduct. And you'll recall that the Ohio Collaborative was initiated at the state level in 2015 to improve police and community relations by creating more uniform standards for law enforcement. Just for informational purposes, he also shared data with the committee that was collected by Channel 5 on area law enforcement related to things like racial and gender breakdown of staff at each jurisdiction, use of body cameras and cruiser cameras, and types of training offered. We were joined at this meeting by a member of the Human Rights Commission, and in light of the national focus on police, our discussion of these topics was especially robust. We were all on the same page in terms of confidence that we all have in our police force, our desire to support them, and our commitment to appropriate oversight. Going forward, Chief Wallace would like to create a new supervisory position in the area of training to be effective next year. The person in this role would rotate through each shift and work with individual officers on the various aspects of their job. He feels that this would further improve the department long-term, and he is still working on the specifics. The committee supported the idea as an item to include in the 2021 budget. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions? Now we'll move on to the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Finance Committee met to discuss adopting a policy allowing for the use of employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty. The Ohio Revised Code requires that certain officers, appointees, and employees must have surety bond in place before they can commence working on their assigned capacity. For most of this part, these roles involve money, like the treasurer, finance administrator, income tax administrator.
Make sure you're speaking into the mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mayor's court clerk and the administrative assistant. We currently have an insurance policy in place, but because of the change in the Ohio laws, this becomes somewhat redundant. As a result, we're able to save approximately $1,800 by adopting this particular ordinance. Accordingly, I move that we adopt ordinance number 2020-14, an ordinance adopting policy allowing for the use of employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty policy.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2020-14, which is an ordinance adopting policy allowing the use of employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty policy. Are there any questions? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2020-14. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak. Yes. Peg Conway.
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach.
Yes.
Alita Kamine.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Ray Warren.
Yes.
Natalie Wolf.
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Okay, we'll now move on to the Streets, Public Utilities, and Sewers Committee.
Thank you, Tom. The Streets, Public Utilities, and Sewer Committee met on September 9th, and we had a very full schedule, very full agenda, and part of which is represented by the ordinance before you. Just before I get to the contents of the ordinance, at last council meeting, I talked about a consolidation of the 2020 and 2021 streets program would include repair of Section Road and Galbraith Road. The CT engineer, Mr. Tweehus, estimated that the cost of both projects would be about $40,000. However, when bids were sent out just for the Section Road project, the bids came back between $41,000 and $50,000, considerably more than anticipated. Mr. Tweehus recommended that we delay this work and resubmit bids later this winter, and the committee concurred. So just wanted to let you know that that project will be delayed. The next item just relates to funding of streets, and this will be pretty elaborate, but it will include the ordinance before you. As you know, the village's infrastructure projects are funded through a combination of the general fund, license plate fees, gasoline tax, and the village's stormwater utility fund. In an average year, the village receives about $200,000 from license plate fees and gasoline tax, and contributes about $200,000 from the general fund to fund street programs. We can also utilize the stormwater utility fund to pay for the stormwater portion of street programs. In addition to what I just described, there is also money potentially available from the Municipal Road Fund, or MRF, which is generated from the sale of license plates within the corporate limits of Amberley. The village can apply for money to be used on qualifying roads by working with the Hamilton County Engineer's Office, which is involved with ranking projects and determining which projects are funded. In 2016, the village applied for the Ohio Public Works Commission funds and MRF funds to assist in the reconstruction of North and South Farmcrest Drive and Kincaid Road. However, the village wasn't successful with the OPWC funding. As you know, we've applied multiple times. The last time we missed by a score of a couple points. We were pretty close. But we were successful in receiving MRF funding for Kincaid Road. The MRF funding was in the amount of close to $96,000, but was only available for Kincaid Road improvements. The village applied for MRF funding in September of 2019 for the reconstruction of the portion of Kincaid between North and South Farmcrest Drive, and was awarded about $71,000, which represents about 1/3 of the total cost of the project. The total cost of the project is going to come to about $236,000. Together with what we would contribute to the project, we will be applying for an OPWC grant of $88,000. And that will be part of a FarmCrest grant. And that's what I'll talk about next. Assuming it's funded, the $236,000 cost of the project will move forward. So, but what is before you is the ordinance that will enable us to enter into agreement with the Hamilton County Board of Commissioners to receive this MRF funding. Okay, so this is ordinance number 2020-14. It's ordinance adopting policy allowing use of wrong one, sorry. Let me scroll down. Oof. An ordinance authorizing an agreement between Amberley Village and the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners relative to the improvement of Kincaid Road. There's a motion before council.
And just one, you referred to it as 2020-14, it's actually
2020-15. Yes. Ordinance 2020-15.
Ray, one question for you. We've got a moved and seconded on the motion. This is the first reading of this. Are you?
Right.
Are
So
you making any
we would.
motion to waive the three readings?
Yes, staff is recommending that we waive the three readings of ordinance 2020-15 and adopt it this week on September 14th, so we can move forward with the application.
So you're making a motion to waive the three readings?
Yes.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we waive the three readings with respect to ordinance 2020-15, which is an ordinance establishing an agreement between Amberley and the Hamilton County Commissioners for the grant related to Kincaid. Are there any questions or comments on the motion to waive the three readings? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the three readings with respect to ordinance 2020-15. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak.
Yes.
Peg Conway.
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach.
Yes.
Alita Kamine.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Ray Warren.
Yes.
Natalie Wolf.
Yes.
Okay, now would be appropriate to make a motion with respect to the ordinance.
I can make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-15, authorizing an agreement between Amberley Village and the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners relative to the improvement of Kincaid Road.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2020-15, which is the ordinance related to the grant on Kincaid Road. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2020-15. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak.
Yes.
Peg Conway.
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach.
Yes.
Alita Kamine.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Ray Warren.
Yes.
Natalie Wolf.
Yes.
Okay, now this will allow, this ordinance will come into effect 45 days from this evening, and that is plenty of time for the grant, correct?
All right. Thank you. So one other thing about the LRF funding, if we're not successful in getting the OPWC grant, we can always return the funds to Hamilton County. Okay, the next item is discussion of the North Farm Crest Road upgrade. As you know, the village has long recognized that the Farm Crest roads, north and south, are in need of major repair. The cost of the north side portion is estimated to be over $800,000, and the cost of the south side is estimated to be over $700,000. In past years, we failed to score high enough to secure vital OPWC grants. Mr. Tweehus, the village engineer, discovered a way to considerably increase our score and focus on North Farm Crest. And the reason for focusing on North Farm Crest is it has greater traffic than South Farm Crest, and again will give us more points. The village could apply for a loan from the Ohio Water Pollution Control Loan Fund that could conceivably contribute 30% of the total projected cost of North Farm Crest, or $217,000. The loan is typically used for stormwater control. Matching funds from the Village Street Fund of $234,000 and the Stormwater Utility Fund of $197,000 would represent about 50% of the project cost. Funds from these three sources, that is the loan and the two funds from the village, would theoretically would increase our application score by 6 points, which is a huge difference. Recall the last time we applied for OPWC grant, we fell short by just a couple of points. So this should put us over the threshold and enable the village to secure a grant of $162,000, or 20% of the total project cost. With regard to the loan, the interest is extremely favorable at a rate of 0.17%. The loan must be held for a minimum of 5 years. Because of the limited amount of funds in our Stormwater Utility Fund, we would anticipate we would need to dip into the general fund to pay for this. So with securing the loan, assuming we secure the loan, we can expect approval of an OPWC grant in July of 2021 and construction in 2022. So this is just for your information. The committee did authorize the village manager to get an application, and council will subsequently meet to approve the OPWC grant applications. Mr. Tweehus also spent a considerable amount of time talking about the state of our streets. And I'm going to summarize what he shared with us, but I'm going to ask the village manager to send all council members, and certainly to make it available to residents, 2 documents. One is a document that describes the streets, and one is a PowerPoint, which basically summarizes that document. So I'm going to walk through this with you, so you may need a pencil and paper. Of the village's 29.9 miles of paved streets, 26.4 miles are asphalt pavement, and 3.5 miles are composite pavement, which means they have a concrete base. Another way of assaying our streets is using square yards, or area. Using this measure, about 88% of our streets are asphalt and 12% are composite. Now, the streets are rated based on the type of maintenance required, and this is using standard methodology from ODOT. Oh, what I failed to mention is that Mr. Tweehus conducted this survey in the latter half of 2019 and submitted a report to the village manager in the early part of this year. Okay, the last time we had an assessment of our streets was in 2012, so that's 7 years ago. So with regard to our streets, the streets are rated based on the type of maintenance required. Streets classified as being in very good condition represent 26% of our streets and basically require preventive routine maintenance such as sealing and microsurfacing. Streets classified as being in good condition represent 46% of our streets and can require minor rehabilitation such as asphalt overlay and more extensive microsurfacing. Streets classified as being in fair condition represent about 25% of our streets and can require major rehabilitation, such as partial to full depth pavement repairs, depth curb repair, and storm sewer review. Streets classified as being in poor condition represent 3% of our streets and can require reconstruction, such as complete pavement replacement, curb replacement, drive approach replacement, and utility replacement. Now, the maintenance or repair cost per square yard climbs as the street condition worsens. For example, streets in very good condition can be expected to have an annual maintenance cost of about $3.50 a yard. This will climb to $18 per square yard for streets in good condition, to $28 for streets in fair condition, to $132 for streets in poor condition requiring reconstruction. Our three worst streets that we've talked about on numerous occasions that are classified as poor include Farmcrest, Farm Acres, and the Kincaid Extension. All are concrete-based streets. Now, while they only represent 3% by area, the street reconstruction costs could represent over 30% of the total street repair cost. Now, with proper maintenance, the expected life of an asphalt street can be extended from 20 to up to 60 years. So despite cost of maintenance, it certainly pays to maintain our streets. So with regard to overall cost, how are we doing? In 2012, the estimated cost for all street repair was $8 million, or about $267,000 a year over 30 years. In 2019, this figure climbed to $10.3 million, or about $350,000 a year over 30 years. Now, the village has been spending about $350,000 a year for the last 8 years. This doesn't include the big-ticket items such as Farmcrest or Farm Acres or Kincaid, although there has been street repair to try as best we can to maintain these streets. With regard to the overall assessment, Mr. Tweedens said that the village is holding steady. We have neither moved forward nor slipped backward in maintaining the condition of our streets. Certainly, we need to improve our worst streets. Ultimately, this affects property values not only in the affected area, but the entire village. And the cost of repair will only increase with time. So where do we get funding for all this? Mr. Larmer shared the various funding sources that could be applied to street repair. Today, our sources are derived from the state gasoline tax, motor vehicle license tax, grants, interest, and transfers from the general fund. Revenues will increase due to the increase in the state gasoline tax. And there may be other possibilities for generating street repair revenue. The Finance Committee will take this up in earnest. And so I would certainly urge all council members and certainly residents to try and attend these Finance Committee meetings when we start going through and reviewing the potential financing of our particularly troubled streets. The last item I'd like to talk about is waste collection recycling. The end of this calendar year will mark the completion of the third year of our contract with Rumpke. While years 4 and 5 are optional, the escalator clauses warrant the village to bid out a new contract. The village manager believes we can do better while maintaining the same services. So more to come in the next month or two. And that concludes the streets report.
And there will be a few questions, and I'll start with Councilwoman Kamon.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. That was very thorough. I just wanted to sort of make a clarifying maybe comment or statement, but if I say something wrong, feel free to correct me. There's so much detail in what you just said, and I know a lot of us have been living in the weeds on this, but for people who just make sure that we heard you right, for residents who might be listening, we are going to have a normal streets program in 2021, a regular streets program for the streets that are our regular non-concrete streets. We don't know exactly, we know what those are, but we're rebidding some of the work. So residents will know that we are on track to have a normal streets program next year. The residents on Farmcrest, you know, we are, once again, have not forgotten about you. We are working very hard with a new strategy to continue to find matching dollars. And the reason it's so hard and so difficult on those streets, and it can't just be like every other street, is because they're part of that small percent you mentioned that are these concrete streets. So they have to be fully reconstructed at a very high cost as compared to our other streets. And so
Correct.
it's two different things, but we're working on both diligently on both.
And that's correct, Alita. And to be very clear, I mean, I have to give kudos, hats off to the village manager as well as the village engineer. I mean, the village manager has been, scratching, I know he's been scratching his head for the last few years about how we do these poor streets. And Ms. Tweezes came up, well, I believe a colleague of his came up with this idea to secure this loan, which is virtually an interest-free loan. Okay, it's 0.1%. And that could secure, and that would give us a significantly higher score in securing the Ohio Public Works Commission grants. So we feel encouraged that we will get it, but obviously you've got to go through the process. So I think this is good news, or at least, for half of Farmcrest. And as I said, the village manager and the finance committee will be digging into this more deeply in terms of, long-term, how do we manage and fix our worst streets? Because those costs will continue to increase, and those streets are in poor shape. We all recognize that.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Ray. We'll now move on to a report from the Planning Commission.
This is the first reading of Ordinance 2020-16, adding Chapter 154.84 to Title IV of the Village of Amberley Codified Ordinances regarding Amberley Green Zoning District regulations, and also to set a public hearing. By adopting this code section, it would effectively, in order to effectively consider any type of development of the village-owned Amberley Green property, the zoning must be changed from the current restrictive Residence A zoning, which is single-family 1-acre lots. However, the village does not have any other zoning district that would accomplish what residents and council believe should be permitted on Amberley Green. Village staff and council have been working to create an environment to maintain green space for Amberley Green while enabling development to occur if Village Council finds proposed uses acceptable for the 133-acre property. These efforts have culminated in a special zoning district being proposed for adoption by Village Council. Creating the special zoning district would allow for mixed uses to preserve green space, create recreational and residential areas while allowing limited opportunity for revenue generating businesses to locate at the site, which will add to the tax base of the village. So I'm asking that we set this matter for a public hearing on October 12th for more further review by council and residents.
Okay, so it's a first reading. We've already received comments from this evening and others, and in the public hearing we'll receive more comments. After we get comments, including the comments that we've heard tonight, we'll have to, as a council, consider what we do. But this is a first reading, and we've now established a public hearing for October 12th. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you. It's not about the text itself. I'm really eager to hear from our residents, and I hope that we'll take some opportunity to continue to put this out through the website that's dedicated to this and just other information disseminated to residents. But I do have some of the concerns that Louis mentioned in terms of just, we'll see how the next month goes, but, given the limitations and the restrictions on people feeling comfortable coming here and just all of that. I know that 12th is a holiday, and so it's a holiday weekend for some people that just, we may need multiple public hearings, so we'll see how that goes. I will just make, the pleas I made during our work sessions, again, not about the text, but just about some of the things that we can be continuing to keep on the radar on the side, the things that aren't covered by this. a plan, this property is being used so much as a park, especially during this pandemic time, more than ever, and just that slope study discussion that we had, to keep that on the radar, to look ahead at some of those set-aside abilities for the green space and the public space, and to keep that on our radar in parallel so that we don't get to the end of this and we're already behind the 8 ball. So a plea for that. And also, I think this can come up later too, but the limitations of the text that don't allow for things like, that would have to come from direction of council outside of the zoning, like a goal of no more than 50% development to match our other, zoning areas and stuff like that. So some of the things that we've talked about, but specifically that park, that slope study meeting, just kind of making a plea again in a public forum to be able to keep those things moving in parallel alongside of this, that's, generally, and eager to hear from the public.
Not to put Scott or Tammy on the spot, but do you have any recollection of how many views the videos have had, approximately? Is there a way, are you going to push those out again? I mean, because I think those were...
Scott Larmer, Amberley Village Manager. The plan is to recreate the public outreach that we did in advance of the Planning Commission meeting. So that will begin later next week. The plan is also for the print newsletter to arrive in residents' mailboxes prior to your public hearing that you just set for October the 12th. So that should be included in the print newsletter as well. So there will certainly be an effort to inform residents and invite them to provide comments to us on this Amberley Green zoning text.
Thank you.
And just related to the question from Councilwoman Conway, Tammy, if you could just respond back tomorrow in an email or something about how many views is that?
That concludes my report.
Okay. We'll now move on to the Compensation and Benefits Committee.
Great, thank you. So the Compensation and Benefits Committee met last week on Thursday to hear a presentation on a really interesting and kind of a little bit scary, but really interesting topic of succession planning and our we had an interesting presentation from the manager about our employee kind of time horizon for retirements, and also the process and the work that he is doing to plan and prepare for succession, both of filling positions and also ensuring that hiring happens with a culture fit toward the village and a goal of retaining institutional knowledge transfers, which is very a challenging thing to do. We're a very leanly staffed operation, and so it's critical that this is done very, very carefully. And we got a very comprehensive report from the manager on this, which was very interesting. But just a sobering statistic here, we have about 50% of our workforce is retirement eligible in the next 10 years, and I think more than half of that group within the next 5 years. So there's a lot of really planning that is going on and going to need to happen. And the committee was very interested, asked a lot of good questions, and I think we're going to make this topic a regular part of our rotation, like some of our other regular topics in this committee. And perhaps the Police Fire Committee will hear things specific to the police department, but this was a very enlightening topic, and we look forward to more. And that concludes my report, if there's any.
Are there any questions? No? We'll now move on to the manager's report.
Scott Larmer, Amberley Village Manager. Before you this evening is Resolution 2020-27. This is a housekeeping item whereby we are asking you to adopt this resolution, placing a lien on a property here in the village. It is a nuisance property on Long Meadow. This is related to failure to mow the grass and properly take care of the property. The resolution before you this evening would assess a $300 collection on this particular property that will be paid through property taxes. So a motion to approve this is in order by council.
I move that we adopt Resolution 2020-27, requesting the Hamilton County Auditor to place a lien against property.
Second.
Okay, it is moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2020-27, placing a lien on the property as explained. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Tom? This is Ray.
Go ahead.
Question, Scott. What is the cost to the village, and paperwork wise, to move forward on this lien? Because are we going to recover whatever our cost is, or should we consider something like that in the future through an ordinance modification?
Mr. Warren, in this situation, the village contracted to have the property mowed, and so the invoice we received from the contractor was $250. And the village has the option of placing a 15% administrative fee on that, or $50. So in this case, it was the $50 because that is the amount that would be required here. So what's being put as the lien is the $300. That $50 or the 15% is intended to capture staff's time for the administration of this particular lien.
And so you're saying that $50 fee is a reasonable fee based on village time to process everything?
I don't know that I would say it's a reasonable fee, but it is a way to recoup some of our money. But it certainly, when you're dealing with a nuisance property, it takes a lot more than $50. But it is a means of collecting $50 back on top of the invoice. Just keep in mind that the contractor was the one who did the work. It wasn't the village staff that was doing the work. So that's to our advantage.
Right. I'm not suggesting that we delay this. I'm just questioning. I'm just wondering out loud. Should we reconsider what the fee should be and move that to the law committee as a modified ordinance? That's all I'm suggesting.
Ray, that's really not an option. You have an option of 15% or $50. I mean, we can't say no. We want to charge $250.
Is that fee set by the county?
This is dictated in the village ordinance, the code of ordinances.
Correct. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe we should reconsider what our fee schedule should be. That's all I'm saying, just so we recoup our expenses. Our true expenses.
Well, it would be my opinion that you're never going to be able to collect your true expenses when you're dealing with a nuisance property. In this situation, we're able to recoup what the contractor expended and what the village had to pay to have the contractor make the improvements, and then we collected the additional $50 on top of it.
Anything else? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2020-27. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Be it noted that the resolution passes unanimously.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Chief?
I just have a couple items. The first one, Scott was talking about the succession planning. That's something myself and Lieutenant Bloom have been talking about a lot lately, just to make sure that at any given time that, we don't take a step backwards in a department. The way we operate now, it's set to where if anything would happen to myself, Lieutenant Bloom, one or the other could take over, as well as some of the sergeants are prepared to do that. So as we move forward, we'll continue to look at that. We're increasing training on the command staff. Today, we all attended the Attorney General's conference, and that was a big thing that they talked about, was training and the focus on that. When Peg talked about the new training position, that's something myself and Lieutenant Bloom come up with about a month and a half ago. How can we better train our officers so we have the top officers we need? But also, when we get the top officers, they make officers more promotable within our own department. So we need to really focus this next, short window we have, under 5 years, that we, have a lot of changes going to be made. So we have a big focus on this right now. So with our training position, that'll work with that. But over this past weekend, I won't get into a lot, but over this past weekend was National Law Enforcement Appreciation for Women Law Enforcement Officers. So I asked Andrea to come up, just so she could be acknowledged. I think that Andrea, she came here in 2009. In 2016, she got the dog, Canine Creed, and she's done an outstanding job. But, some people say the law enforcement's not, and firefighters not for women. Andrea proves you wrong. She does a fabulous job, and, just like my social media posted, it was a serious post about she does a great job. She's really utilizing her dog. You'll see on the activity reports that her dog's getting used a lot, not only in town, out of town, everywhere. She's really created a name for her dog, herself, and the village. So just for National Law Enforcement Appreciation, we want to say thanks to you. So. Do you want to talk? Do you have anything to say? If you do, you have to come up to the mic here.
I really am honored to be recognized, and even more honored to work for Amberley Village. I believe we have one of the best and strongest police departments around. And what I plan to do is continue to work hard to serve and protect you, to keep Amberley Village safe. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is Scott Larmer, Amberley Village Manager. Thanks to Rob Ebel, he looked up the number of views that we had on our videos, and the cumulative of those all on Amberley Green, 611 views, so that's pretty significant. So there is the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
And Chief, you're finished? Okay. The only thing I want to mention, and kind of in Mayor's report, is recognizing our community garden this evening, which was, you mentioned that Amberley Green being used as a park this evening as part of the Greater Cincinnati Garden Center's 40-year anniversary of community gardening and supporting community gardening. There was a 5-member woodwind ensemble from Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra that did a concert up at our community garden, because our community garden is one of the gardens that brings together other hub gardens. It's called the Hub Garden, and it brings gardeners in from other communities and runs programs. But it was a very nice program that was put on by the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. I think our garden really does look very, very nice this year. It's again full. All the plots are taken, so it's another very successful year. And it looks great, all the flowers and everything like that, in addition to the vegetables. And that's all I have. Is there any new business?
Very quickly, I just wanted to, this Friday night begins Rosh Hashanah, which will be this weekend, and then Yom Kippur the following week. So just wishing a Happy New Year to all of our Jewish residents in the village.
I have a question, as long as Carol's still here, but yoga on the green, is that this Friday at 7:30 a.m. and what's the p.m. time?
So Fridays.
Sorry.
Thank you. So we're starting again, beginning this Friday, 7:30 a.m., and then Sunday afternoons, 4 to 5.
Sunday.
Yeah.
7:30 a.m. is early.
And that's at Amberley Green or here at the municipal
That's
building?
when the volunteers, we have volunteer instructors, so that's when they want to do it. So, and that may end up getting switched to Thursday evenings. She wanted to give it a try on Friday mornings to see, how it goes. So we'll see.
Carol, the question was asked, is it at Amberley Green or is it here?
It's here, actually. It's, yeah, right next to the tennis courts.
Okay, thank you.
Grass is green. That's
Yep.
why it's called yoga on the green.
Tom, I wanted to share something from a continuation of our last council meeting last month.
Okay?
So at the very end of our council meeting last month, had some questions about the upgrades at French Park, whether they were a result of a donor, and you had stated they were, and there's signage recognizing the Amberley Village families that have contributed. A couple days later, the village manager, Mr. Larmer, sent us a little blurb from Cincinnati Parks. So I'd just like to read a little bit of it and kind of give formal recognition to our Amberley Village families. This is from, I forgot when this came out, but anyway, in August of 2017, the Cohen, Michelman, and Schiffman families made a generous gift to the Cincinnati Parks Foundation to restore all the hiking trails in French Park. Over the following 2 years, the hiking trail system was refurbished, including the construction of new bridges, steps, and reopening sections of trail closed due to fallen trees, debris, and erosion. The work was performed by the Cincinnati Parks' newly established trail crew. In June of 2019, city leaders joined with the Cincinnati Park Board, the Cincinnati Parks Foundation, the donors, and community members to officially cut the ribbon on the renovated French Park hiking trails. A brief ceremony was held at the Sierra Trail Trailhead to commemorate the project and recognize the donors who made it possible. The families were given the honor of cutting the ribbon, which proved to be a truly heartwarming moment. And the ceremony was followed by all participants hiking on the newly dedicated trails. So again, thank you to the Cohen, Michelman, and Schiffman families for really enhancing the quality of life in our village.
Okay, anything else? If not, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn into executive session for the purpose of discussing employment related to one of our public employees. Okay, for those in attendance, we will be, well, first, hang on. It has been moved and seconded that we adjourn into executive session. Please call the roll with respect to that motion.
Will I be able to participate?
Yes. I think we'll just stay here.
Okay.
Richard Bardak. Peg Conway.
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach.
Yes.
Alita Kamine. Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Ray Warren.
Yes.
Natalie Wolf.
Yes.
Okay, for those in attendance, what we will be doing is we're adjourning into executive session. We'll come back into general session, but we will not be doing any additional business. When we come back into general session, it'll be just adjourned.
Tom, are there other